Hi guys, welcome to our hangout. Me back. I do it once a year because I'm great at this. So today we're talking about Séance Tea Party by Reimena Yee. I picked this one just because, yes, Mel's got one. I even have the physical copy.
Even better.
That's overdue, by the way, by 2 weeks. But it's
naughty.
Right. I'll return it this weekend. Anyway, ACT libraries, please don't listen to this hangout, by the way. Maybe I shouldn't have called myself out. Anyway, so that it's like this young adult, somewhat fantastical, maybe a little bit of veering into romance, graphic novel. And I picked it because it looks like an easy, lovely graphic novel, because I had a forethought that we'd be heading into election during my pick, and I didn't want to read something where I had to give too much headspace. So this one was it. In terms of my own thoughts, I thought it was really lovely. I love the friendship between the two main characters. So what happens is this young girl, she seems to not have a lot of friends, but she's in her preteens. Her name is, I have completely forgot, Laura.
Yeah.
And one day she holds a seance and calls a ghost, and she becomes best friends with this ghost, and they go through all sorts of things as she grows up. And it's just really nice, lovely. The actual art, I actually want to keep some of the art because it's just so pretty and whimsical. I don't think I'm going to be talking too much about this book because it's quite simple, but I really liked it. Because I can see Mel on the screen, I'm going to hand it to you if you've read it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I have. I definitely finished it. I would have called it more middle grader than a YA personally, which doesn't make it a bad book at all, just, more what age group I think it was aimed at. Very sweet, very lovely. Wasn't massively fussed on the artwork at the beginning. It grew on, well, I wouldn't say it grew on me because that means that I kind of liked it. I just got more numb to it by the end, so it didn't bother me. So it didn't really work well for me. I wasn't going, whoa, that's so pretty, personally. It's personal choice, they live. But yeah, I thought it was a solid basic story about friendship and how, like, I particularly like the aspect of the idea that you can have friends and then you can go through times where you feel like you don't have friends and you feel like you're socially inept at those periods, and that's not necessarily true, and that you can, and things like that can change and progress and things like that. So I like the depiction of that side of things in particular, at least from Laura's side. From Alexa's side, it's a little bit of a different types of story in terms of what's going on with her. I feel like it was actually both their stories in a lot of respects. It wasn't really just Laura's story, even though it starts off and feels very much like her story in the beginning. I felt by the end that it was actually, it almost felt the reverse. So it kind of was both to me. But yeah, good story.
Awesome. Kirsten.
Yep. I agree with Mel. I do think it was more middle grade. I kept thinking, this would be good for my library. And then there's a couple of things I thought, maybe not. But yeah, I really quite liked it. It was cute. It was sweet. I don't have a lot of thoughts though. But I enjoyed it. It was a nice, quick, fun read.
Awesome.
Perfect, right before the election.
Yes. No, not too much headspace. Kim.
I have to say I agree with everyone so far. It's cute and sweet. It was a nice, easy, happy read. Yeah, I don't have anything specific to say about it at the moment. The art, yeah, I did think it was very different, I think, from a lot of art I've seen. I didn't think it was anything, out of the world, crazy, but it was nice to have a little bit of a different spin on comic book art. I like to see something a little bit different every now and again. So that was nice as well. And I really like the front cover. I really thought that was pretty. Yep.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, mostly just agree with what everyone else has said so far. I quite like the theme of, not wanting to grow up and about keeping your imagination when you do. That was quite lovely. It's although it is a sweet book, I did cry at the end, I have to say. And as for the artwork, it wasn't, it didn't really grab me a whole lot. But as Mel said, it kind of did grow on me, and I quite liked the autumnal palette that it used. Lots of like yellows and browns and oranges and things. So that was quite lovely, and perhaps appropriate for the season here at the moment.
I was just thinking it would have probably been a great read for October, but then that's our spring. So
You have to have it either, like one part of it, either way. Sarah.
Hello. I agree with everybody here. I didn't mind the art because I felt that it suited the subject matter and the audience it was aimed at. It felt like a children's book, but a bit older. I got serious, babysitter club vibes from some of the very kind of the friendships and the cuteness and the growing up. Like, it was very much like a lot of the babysitter club books. Like, I think about the Marianne stories and the Dawn stories. They were always in that kind of preteen, things are about to change and here's a sense of it kind of feel to it. And I also read most of those books when I was not that age. I was a lot younger. So some of the art pieces just sort of appealed to that. I don't know, when I was younger, you kind of see, you want all the tchotchkes and the knickknacks because it sort of seems like something that's grown up and stuff. And I thought the artwork really reflected that, which I liked. So, I thought it was really, really lovely. I liked that it was also the journey of Alexa, and that would probably be the only thing for me was I wouldn't have minded a bit more time with her and her experience. Like, there was stuff in there, but I felt from what her journey was through this friendship, maybe on reading there was enough there. I don't know, I just feel like there was something to be explored maybe a little bit further in regards to letting go. And in the same it's lovely how these two things can be true at the same time, where you've got this whole don't lose your imagination, it's okay that you're scared of growing up, but there's also this, you do also have to move on. And there was that, like, I liked that how they seem like juxtaposition, but they're kind of not. So I think I would have liked that to come through maybe a little bit more, but I thought she did a very admirable job with it. Because there was stuff in the friendship that Alexa had with the middle-aged
Diana
lady. Yes, thank you. Who was her childhood friend, and I thought there was something maybe along that life that I need to move on because I didn't get that childhood, but I also, that's the bit I felt was missing, was that she didn't look at Diana, who went on to university and got married and went adventuring and had, like, there was this big life well lived, and maybe a little bit more like melancholy to that. So yeah, it was a really sweet book. I think it was aimed definitely at a preteen audience, if not maybe a little bit younger. Some of the themes might be, but you could explore them later. Like, there's nothing wrong with stuff that can go over heads at one age and hit at other ages. And I thought what I thought was interesting was she wrote that mostly in Brisbane. Was it Brisbane? When I was
she lives in Melbourne. I don't know where.
Was in Melbourne? Yeah, and I was like, she made Halloween autumnal. So
the whole book is very American. Like, that was one of the things I wrote a note about.
I was really thrown by that, because I was like, from the two places that I think she's Malaysian or Indonesian, which is more on the equator, and then with Melbourne, I was like, which definitely has can have a strong autumn feel in around about now. I was like, that's really interesting, but you know, at the same time, know your audience, know who you're trying to cater to and where it's going to sell. I can't falter for that. So, yeah.
I completely missed that the author like lived in Australia.
Same. I didn't realize that either because it felt very American to me.
Yeah, that's why it took me by surprise.
Thing
Same.
and, yeah.
It was only because I
took me-
read something at the end or something that told me that I was like, wait, what? And
Yeah,
then I went,
I did the same
and then
thing.
I was like, wait, but from Kuala Lumpur, lives in Melbourne. Why did you base this in America?
So,
yeah, and I was like, did that come from the publishers or did you make that choice?
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, who did it come from? But at the same time, she is exploring Halloween, and that's why I got those big Babysitter Club vibes, because that was always a big thing for pre-teen, because it's kind of like, I suppose it's the most important thing, like, oh, it's this big thing and I can take part in it type holiday, and I'm growing out of it type thing. So yeah.
And if you want to do something Halloween-y in a fictional thing, making it in America so you can make it fall just makes it fall, autumn. Makes more sense visually, I guess, because Halloween isn't a huge thing here. In some areas it's bigger, but in other areas it's like in SA it's barely nothing. But I know in Queensland it's a lot bigger and things like that. So
it's getting bigger, but I still don't think it's that.
I still think it's a lot bigger than
America.
I think
definitely not.
I think the vibes of it being a seasonal thing as well, and you know, there's a lot of, I guess, tradition, history, and cultural stuff around it. Like when we read Pumpkinheads, was that only last year? Was it last year or the year before? I loved that. I loved that. I just was like, yeah, that's what I want for Halloween. I want to go there. So yeah, that's why I was very much like, I liked this for this character. So
I think the other thing too is that it's kind of known at the moment in the market that basing stuff in Australia doesn't sell as well.
No, and that's what I wondered. Like you said, is it the publisher, or is she just kind of go, know your audience?
Well, that's the thing. See, we're used to reading stuff that's American, so it's not a big deal to sell it here when it's American. But making it Australian and selling it elsewhere is harder. So, but it's niche.
Very sad. But I did quite like Alexa going trick-or-treating as a ghost.
Oh, I love that.
That was so cute.
Oh, and the bit when they're doing the Hail Mary or whatever, the free time.
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary. And she comes through like, oh my God, it's real. And then they have this moment afterwards going, I did it, didn't I?
I remember.
That's cute. I can't take off the blanket. She's got that Bloody Mary. Tell them I've got hives. I've got hives. It's really gross. She doesn't want to take it off. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I guess the way the other girls were like, oh, okay, that was a smart idea, instead of, because I felt like it could have been one of those things where they tease somebody else about stuff like that. And I feel like when I was in high school, that's what would have happened. But I felt like they were all just so nice and kind and accepting and going, oh yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah, like even though they weren't like on a level that Laura and Alexa were quite interested in, it wasn't in a mean way at all.
Yeah.
Like
we can still be around each other even if we're not all exactly on the same level with everything.
Yeah, and they were all, quite welcoming, and there were moments where they did connect with the younger girls and that sort of thing. So that was really nice.
It was nice. It's not something you see a lot. It's not something in literature you don't see that a lot. There's a lot of tropes around, older girls being mean or teasing, and I thought that was lovely and hopefully a bit of a template for younger readers to feel influenced by.
I also think it was quite realistic in that, like, you wouldn't immediately have these young girls coming in and just jiving immediately with these older girls and stuff, and so for it to be like a little bit and off and on and a little bit of just but we'll just sit here together kind of thing and stuff, that just felt very real.
Also too, that the old girls, they're not that much older, so
I was just thinking that they're like 13.
Easy enough to remember what that was like. And
I think it was more
less
to do with age and more to do with we've got an established friendship group and you're coming in and joining in than it was necessarily age.
It's
Yeah.
something I can relate to as well. Having these friends that you suddenly feel disconnected from, that you've grew up with, and their interests have changed and they don't quite align with what you're interested in anymore, and going off and just meeting these other people that you're like, okay, it's not me that's weird and thinks of is interested in things that nobody else is interested in, because these people are right here and they're interested in the stuff. So it's like she was sort of feeling alienated and other from everyone, and she's started to find in these people that she's not strange, she's not weird, she's not a kid. She isn't immature. She can still enjoy the things without being thought of as a kid, because they enjoyed the things that she enjoyed, and she thought they were kid-like because none of her friends were interested in it anymore. So it's quite sweet and quite nice to see that sort of story.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to change. Sometimes our people are just
Yeah.
somewhere else. Yeah.
And it was nice because she was only seeing one way of engaging with more older pursuits from the other friends who are getting more into it, whereas these older girls are kind of going, hey, we know you're into kind of gothy stuff, you can get like blue lipstick, there's other ways you can express some of those things through that, which I really loved, because that's the thing about a lot of this stuff, is that there's a niche in all of it, in everything, right? It's like, if you're into you're into, I don't know, I'm just making it up, but let's say, I like denim, they're all like denim skirts. Well, you could have like skirts that are patchwork stuff or embroidered, because that's more reflective of you, so I really like that.
I think someone say something.
No, I think that was just Sarah coughing
Oh,
and the kids
right.
in the background.
And I like how Alexa was sort of that, what's the word, that sort of pathway in between that, going, you can be still you. It's okay. I think that sort of bridge the gap in a way.
I think it's very important to sort of differentiate too, like her as a young girl, her idea of growing up was that she had to leave things like imagination behind, and that's just not true. And it's just something that I think young people get an impression of, because they get presented this idea of what adulthood and growing up will look like. But just because you can be into some of those things but still have your imagination, you can still be this kind of person, and you are grown up, and you just engage with the bits that you like. And so it was, I think that like part of an extension to what Sarah was saying, because that theme of imagination and growing up and stuff, I think it's very important to address that with young kids, because they get very particular ideas in their heads.
And I think that kind of theme is also transferable to different generations as well. Like in your 20s, you're probably going, where am I comparing to the rest of my age group as well? So it's quite universal in a way.
Indeed.
I think there's a lot that I like. There's a lot about how to fit in, you don't have to be a clone, or you don't have to feel like, fitting in. Or I'm not explaining myself very well, but that's what I liked, was her friends were saying, you can explore this on your own terms. If it's not for you, that's okay. But because I think you're right about the young people going, it has to be, it has to be this type of, I always think about the fashion stuff. When I was like 13, it was like, it has to be, a denim jacket that looks like this kind of style, as opposed to, like a denim jacket from the 70s that explores stuff, or a black one, like you can find your own way of, this is what the fashion is, to explore that. And that's what I thought was really lovely in this book, was these older girls were giving her a gateway to explore if she wanted to engage with those things, but with her own interests, and not like bringing her creativity and imagination to it, to say, well, I'm really into bats and stuff, so I'm really into this kind of stuff.
I think the other side of that too is that she skirted really close to it, but she never actually dealt with it, which is that a lot of kids start positioning themselves in opposition to things. And Laura was skirting really close to that side of things when she was sort of like, I'm not into these things, I don't want to be that person and stuff, as opposed to sort of going, that just happens to be what you're into. and she just skirted super close to it. And I thought she did a really good job of not letting her fall into it while sort of still vaguely addressing it at the same time.
Yeah. It's just a lovely template for young people to kind of go, yeah, exactly. You don't have to reject it and decide this is a worldview and value set that you have to, you know, abide by. It's, you know, yeah, which you're quite right. It's that cynicism that embeds itself a little too early. I wondered, did anyone, I used Comixology. Did anybody else use a digital app to read it? Everyone else? Okay, cool. Did you use Comixology, and do you use the guided view, Mel? Yeah, cool. So it was really interesting when you were talking about the art, because I got where you, like, I agree, because it was also aimed a little bit lower and it kind of suited that. But what I really loved was the consideration of the movement of the, like, how she designed the panels and movement and where I love Comixology guided view, because it really helps bring me into each frame. Otherwise, sometimes I get a bit distracted, and I love that kind of the following of I guess a storyboard. Essentially, we're here, move shot, bringing stuff in, and I love that. And I thought that the author / illustrator, she'd done such a thoughtful job of how each panel moved and then what might be a background theme to stuff. So I don't know if others kind of saw that, like others of it might have more of a mind to be able to kind of do it naturally. I'm not very good at that. I just kind of go, and then
yeah, it was quite nice. Instead of doing, you know, a panel, she sort of had this overarching picture, which is one panel in the background. And then put the other panels inside. That was quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I really loved that. And then she'd have sometimes, like panel, and then maybe more.
Yeah, a lot like that the whole way
through.
Yeah.
There's one page that's just a couple further on from that, when she meets her friend Sunny, that I think is a really good example if you find that one. When Sunny
I
first
like
comes
this
out of the door
one too, where they're sort of like dancing a bit.
Oh, I loved that. That's what I mean. Like, this is, like, for me, using, like, it's great that way, but I also loved being guided through each move, because I really felt like I was looking at a storyboard. Like, you can see why, you know, how movies and comics influence each other back and forth, which I love. I love that dynamism to it.
Yeah.
Which one was the one that you saw there, Mel? The one with Sunny? Could you find it for us, Liv?
Do you know what page it roughly was?
52 maybe. It's after she's just been out and she visits Sunny's house trick-or-treating.
Oh, is this when they're doing the ghost story?
Like that.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I think it's a particularly good example because it really clearly shows, like, that background picture with lots of panels sitting on top of it. So it gives that vibe.
And that's the other one that I don't have it, but this being guided through this, like, you're in her head, like literally in her head. And I just thought it was so brilliant. And what's in color, and then what's in black and white, and then just so thoughtfully put, like, this is the past, so it's in color. This was brilliant.
I think it's important first to point out, I know you mentioned it, Sarah, but just to make sure anybody who's watching who hasn't read it is clear, the author is also the artist, which generally influence it means they're not usually first and foremost an artist. So I think that's important when going into the story itself. That doesn't mean that they're a bad artist, by the way. That's not what I mean by that. Just that it means that it's not necessarily their first point of profession. Sometimes it works the other way though.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, because I can think of some that were comic artists that then created a book. You know, like the comic came first before the writing part. Yeah.
But I do find that it tends to, with these sorts of ones where they've got a simpler style of art, it's kind of like Noel Stevenson and things like that. They've it's not their first thing. So when you can usually tell by the art type.
I also quite liked the relationship I think it's Alexa and Diana, her old friend.
I really enjoyed that part too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because we're old, but I was like,
Well, yeah, but Diana was pretty cool.
yeah.
Like, as a
Mm.
character.
She was so cool.
I was very moved.
Can I
by
be
that.
her when I grow up?
Yeah.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah.
It was quite melancholy in a way because
Yes.
there's so
Yes.
much time lost.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I suppose she helped her with realizing that she did have to move on, which is
Yeah.
good.
I think she was a massive part of that, actually.
And I think there was also that part for Diana, you know, even though we're not in her narrative, but I just feel that sort of that important narrative of people, as we get older, we do start reflecting on, you know, the what ifs. And I think that it was there. It doesn't have to be fully explored, but I thought was really lovely is Diana's sort of remembering what it was like for Alexa and how, you know, hard it was and how sick she was, and it having those own reflections on her life. And yeah, it was lovely. And basically her and her, I think it's her grandson and Alexa all together was just that was really lovely. And you could sort of see there was this friendship that she wanted, because I thought there was something with Diana. Diana wasn't treating Alexa like an 11-year-old girl, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
She was like, you are my friend, and I'm you know, like, so there was a bit of that growing up aspect. You know, it was in the places between where she was treating her like she's like, or seeing her. She's not, I don't see you as an 11-year-old girl. I don't see you as a 50-year-old woman. You're in somewhere literally between worlds. And I thought that was really, yeah, like you said, melancholy, but beautiful, moving. I like these type of ghost stories where you're kind of doing where it's really reflecting on one's life and one's pathways, as opposed to being a horror story.
Yeah.
I think there's something there, and I don't know, maybe you know, Elizabeth and Mel are much more a hell of a lot more well read than I am, but is there more exploration of this in other stories? Because I feel like they often go down the more of the horror trope as opposed to the living, using the ghost as a narrative form of exploring their own lives and their own mortality.
Maybe,
and what their life has been or what they wanted to be.
maybe in more of a gothic side of story, but
Right.
I don't think a lot of, I personally haven't, I don't think a lot of ghost stories really veer too much into that realm. And I think it's a nice way to sort of turn it on its head as well, because I suppose with those ghosts still in this world, it's kind of sad because they need to move on. Actually, no, now that I think about it, there is a really good TV show called Being Human. It's a UK one.
Yeah.
And the story of Annie,
I love that.
Yes, I
I
remember.
must watch
I
that. I've
heard
heard good things about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What often makes me think, like, I'm not trying to get off track here, but it makes me think of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the blip, and how we've explored people coming back, like in WandaVision's explored what happened after, and I think how chaotic and how, like, wow, we grieved, we moved on, you're back, and what, like, I think there's so much like, what the hell happened? How did you all cope? You know, when everyone came back, like what? Like that to me is almost like that these were ghosts entering the world. And I was very pleased in WandaVision that they did look at that. I haven't watched anything else yet. I think that's explored a little bit more, but I do think it was almost an exploration of, I wasn't here and now I am. Yeah. So yeah.
I'd actually also recommend TJ Klune's Under the Whispering Door for that sort of thing.
Oh, I've
in
been meaning
terms
to
of-
read that.
Yeah, that's one I've got on my to read list.
I don't
Yes,
really
I
do ghost stories because I don't do scary, but
Yeah.
this is not that.
Yeah, it's
Because
not
I
it's
think
TJ
I read
Klune,
about
he didn't-
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I will check. I'll have a look because that sounds really intriguing.
Bring a few tissues.
Oh.
But emotional stuff, not like gut wrenching, just a bit of
No. But
no,
yeah.
this is just was the same. Like the end of this had me a bit teary.
Yeah.
So
I think anything with ghosts is always going to be a little bit, because you are dealing with, in the end, death and the emotions that surround that
well,
to a certain degree.
Not even necessarily death, but just moving on.
Mhm.
Like just that can be like emotional.
Yes, and a permanent moving on.
Permanent moving on.
Yeah.
There's also
I
like,
also highly recommend Ghost with Patrick Swayze.
Oh yes. Didn't think of that one. Yeah.
Didn't think of that one.
I think, like, you know, when you go to haunted places, for example, the quarantine station in Sydney, it's just really sad.
Yeah.
And that's what I associate with ghosts more than the scary stuff, because yeah.
I think like I used to watch Ghost Hunters, Taps Ghost Hunters, and whatever it was back in my sensationalistic TV times. But they'd often go to abandoned psychiatric hospitals and stuff. There's huge buildings, back before we had such advancements in medicine to help people with chemical imbalances and therapy, and that type of thing. And so, and I just, it was just the stories you'd hear, and I just think it's just so sad. It's just sad, like, that these people that died there may have died not knowing, being unlucky. Anyway, I'm getting a bit melancholy myself now, but I always think same thing. It's like, it's just like, gosh, there's so much to explore there. I made me think of something, by the way. We were talking about Ghost.
Patrick Swayze, he's dead. He's probably an actual
Well,
ghost now.
I'm cheering tonight, aren't we?
Thanks for that, Andrew. Wow.
My brain just went there. I don't know.
Damn it, I forgot. Sorry. There was you reminded me of a movie that I was like, oh yes, no, I remember now. What's the name? Is it Kirsten or Kristen Stewart? Kristen Stewart or Kirsten?
Kirsten.
It's a Kirsten Stewart. I never know.
Is it? Am I right?
Kristen.
I think it's Kristen.
It's Kristen Stewart.
I remember this.
But I do the same thing.
Kirsten Dunst, Kristen Stewart. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. She was in a book. She was in a movie that was really interesting because it's a bit art house indie, but it was quite interesting in terms of the exploration of the living, like hunting ghosts because they're actually looking for meaning in their own lives. And it was basically about a woman whose twin brother had died, and I think he had terminal illness, and he was going to try and send her a message from beyond the grave. And then she went to try and track him down at the old place and ran into another ghost. It was quite well done as far as special effects were concerned. But it really was this it's really her exploration of going, she needs to move on. And then anyway, I'm trying to find the name of the movie because it's actually not, if you are interested out there, internet land or here, it's quite an interesting way of looking at how someone's caught up in the past and the ghost stuff because they are struggling to move on with their lives. Like she basically stays in Paris doing stuff because she's waiting for a sign. She's waiting to trying to track him down as opposed to going, I need to go home, I need to do stuff, etc., etc. I'll find it.
The one I would recommend as well, and this is really old, is Heart and Soul with Robert Downey Jr.
I feel like I've seen that. Is it the one with the people on the bus?
That's the one.
Yeah. That one you need the tissues with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's a couple
He
of
can,
stories.
he can make me cry in the Avengers, so I'm sure he'll make me cry.
Well,
the
actually,
mum?
in this one, it's not really him so much. He's more the comedy element.
Okay.
Whereas
The mum in that story was the
I
big
know.
plot there.
It just kills every time.
So
But
what's
anyway.
it called?
I'm pretty sure it's Heart and Soul, but I could be wrong.
I
That
I
might
think
be
Heart and Souls.
Souls, maybe. Yeah.
I think because like there's more than one
Oh.
ghost, and there's like one alive person that can see them. So he's the heart, and they're the
Hmm.
souls.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
It's
So
been
the
a long
movies-
time.
The
It's
movie
like
with Kirsten Stewart's called Personal Shopper. Personal
Oh, yeah.
Shopper in Paris
Oh, I
refuses
thought
to
that was
leave
her
the
about
city.
being an actual personal shopper.
No, she is. She
Is
is.
it
She's
just-
a personal shopper in Paris. So she can't leave. She's doing this job because she's trying to make contact with her brother who's died there. And it's
That's a
it's
very
not,
deceptive title.
Yes, yeah.
it's not, yeah, you're right. And it's not the world's best movie, but there's some interesting themes that are explored. I just think it's interesting that we aren't doing more of it. It's given me an idea actually, that we don't explore our lives and the meaning or purpose that we're trying to associate with them through ghost stories, I guess, for lack of a better word, because we explore what, if you think about and maybe Elizabeth or Mel, or Elizabeth's usually very good at explaining these things, like why I love sci-fi so much, because a lot of what it's doing is actually making comment on present day. And that's what it's a lot of what sci-fi is actually intending to do, is to make comment or to look at different aspects of present day life and to explore them through, whether it be a dystopia or a future state or a AI. And then it's like going, okay, it's this, but in this world, what does that make us think about that? And I think there's an interesting element to that, which apparently isn't happening that much with ghost stories, where it's like, this is the living exploring what living means to them by their relationship with death. I also just listened to Kate and Doherty's Smoke Gets in Your Eyes this week at the same time I was reading this book. So I'm all about the death this week, guys.
Well, it's also autumn, so like 'tis the season.
Oh,
Yeah,
tis
yeah.
the season.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Actually, talking about ghosts, I don't think I've ever told you this before. So there's actually, Elizabeth, you'll know this, there's a place down in Tuggeranong called Rose Cottage. And my ancestors originally built that back in the day, back in the 1800s. And I remember when I was in high school, I was researching my ancestors, and there's a whole blog and all sorts. These paranormal investigators went to Rose Cottage because there was things about ghost sightings there, and they had all these stories about my ancestors, that my what was it, my great aunt or something, Florence, would throw teacups at the bikies because they were being too rowdy and all sorts. And I remember going back to my mum and auntie going, is this real, and my mum and auntie going, oh, Jesus Christ, who's writing about that's a load of bollocks. But I always thought it was so funny that someone had written about my family in that way. But there was a few things like that. They really did not like the bikies at Rose Cottage. So yeah. Anyway, that's my fun fact of the day. I'm sure I can find it.
Did we have anything else from the book we wanted to talk about, guys?
No, it wasn't all that deep. So
No, I know. I'm just asking. That's all.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's when it's
Okay.
like a middle grade book, it tends to be a bit simpler than other books.
Yeah.
And a graphic novel. less to talk
I
about.
was just thinking I might, we
Yeah.
can keep talking
I'm
about
just
ghosts,
saying.
but we might wrap up the hangout
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. So definitely a recommend.
Mm.
Recommend for a light-hearted, lovely, sweet, a little emotional read.
Yes. I wanted to ask Kirsten, are you going to put it in the library or not? In your school's library?
I would like to. I put Witch Boy in the library, and then I had a parent complain about it because it had occult symbols in it, and I
Right.
feel like that this one could, the Ouija board part at the beginning. I don't personally think that it would be any reason why it shouldn't be in a primary school library, but I am a bit concerned that
Very.
there could be complaints. So yeah.
Once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Did you want to wrap us up, Liv?
Yeah, I was just trying to find the blog.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening to us. I hope you had a wonderful time. And hang out.
And if you're coming next time, we're reading She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. Bye.
Bye.